The Eight Immortals Travel East, Chapter 3.
Today, we are getting into something really, really kind of mind-bending.
Oh, absolutely. It's a wild one today.
Yeah. So we're unpacking this highly concentrated Chapter 3 of the classic text, Journey to the East, titled The Two Immortals Preach the Tao at Mount Hua.
Right. Which is just packed with meaning.
It really is. First, we want to decode the texts, like incredibly specific, almost biological descriptions of what ultimate enlightenment actually looks like.
Yeah, physically it looks like.
Right, in the physical form. And second, we want to extract its exact kind of paradoxical formula for achieving longevity and total mental clarity.
Because it is a cheat code, basically.
It is. And, if you are listening to this right now, I just want you to consider for a second your own baseline level of cognitive noise.
Which is probably really high for most people.
Oh, for sure. We live in this era that is just characterized by a relentless barrage of demands, notifications, just systemic exhaustion.
Constant friction.
Exactly. And when we want inner peace, when we look for a cheat code, our modern instinct is usually geographical. Like, we want to book a remote cabin.
Right. Physically go somewhere else.
Yeah, unplug the router, isolate ourselves. But this ancient text, it suggests a radically different mechanism.
It really does. It requires completely dismantling how we understand our minds, our bodies, and honestly, the fabric of destiny itself.
Right. So the landscape we're entering today is, it's the absolute definition of spiritual muddy waters.
Yeah, it presents a literal blueprint for biological and psychological transformation.
And it centers around this spiritual seeker named Li Tigui.
Yes, Li Tigui.
And in this narrative, Li basically gets the ultimate audience, a direct face-to-face encounter with two supreme masters, Laozi and Wang Qi.
High up on the peaks of Mount Hua.
Yeah. So to really get the implications of this, we have to look at how the text frames the very nature of spiritual progression right from the jump.
The opening scene is crucial.
It is. So it opens with Laozi and Wang Qi sitting in this grand hall, just discussing the Tao.
Just casually hanging out.
Right. And the catalyst for the whole story is entirely atmospheric. The text says, Hu King Feng Yizilen, Chuiru Tangzong.
Which basically means a sudden gust of clear wind blows into the hall.
Right. And Laozi turns to Wang Qi and asks if he recognizes this wind.
And Wang Qi immediately senses that it's not just, mountain weather changing.
No, not at all. He states that an extraordinary person is approaching.
Which establishes how attuned these masters are physically. The wind is like a precursor.
Like a ripple in the air.
Yeah,
right.
Ripple in the energetic field. It shows that a huge concentration of qi, or life force, is moving up the mountain.
But then the narrative pivots, right? It goes from sensory attunement to something deeply, almost weirdly administrative.
Yes, the administrative part is fascinating.
Because Laozi doesn't just wait to see who walks through the door. He consults the Xianlu.
The immortal records.
Right, the immortal records. He checks this ledger, and he confirms with absolute certainty that Li Tigui is about to achieve the Tao.
And that his specific reason for coming up the mountain today is to ask questions about his path.
Which introduces this massive philosophical tension right in the first paragraph.
Oh, absolutely.
Because, we usually think of spiritual enlightenment as this organic, serendipitous journey of self-discovery.
Right, like the seeker is struggling in the wilderness and suddenly has a breakthrough.
Exactly. But here, enlightenment is framed as an administrative certainty. It feels almost bureaucratic.
Like there's a literal cosmic registry.
Yeah, the universe has a ledger, and Li's breakthrough is already documented before he even reaches the top of the mountain.
The masters know who he is, what his status is, what he's going to ask.
Which is kind of wild. It really forces us to look at the Taoist concept of order.
It does, because people today often misunderstand the Tao.
Yeah, they do.
They think it's just this passive, formless chaos, like just going with the flow, man.
Right, the whole be water thing, but taken to mean just doing whatever.
Exactly. But classical texts often show the universe as having this incredibly intricate underlying architecture.
Like a structural framework.
Yeah. A ledger implies rigorous observation, tracking, a systemic, almost mathematical process that governs spiritual evolution.
So his solitary practice in the mountains wasn't happening in a vacuum.
Not at all. It was being continuously logged by the cosmos.
See, I find this idea really problematic from a human agency standpoint.
Oh, totally. It brings up the free will debate.
Yeah, because if we accept that there's a literal immortal record book, it feels like it strips away the mysticism.
And the struggle, too.
Right, the free will inherent in the struggle. If Lousy can just check a book and see, oh, hey, Lyle is scheduled to get enlightened today at 2 p.m.
Right, it makes the whole thing feel staged.
Exactly. It makes his grueling hike up the mountain feel theatrical.
Yeah.
Why would omniscient supreme beings even need an HR database?
That's a great question.
It implies a deterministic universe where Lee is just an actor reading a script.
Well, that tension between determinism and agency is central to the text, for sure. But seeing the ledger as a prescriptive script is kind of a Western fatalistic way of reading it.
Okay, so how should we read it?
In this paradigm, the Cian-Lu is better understood as descriptive, not prescriptive.
Ah, okay. That's a big distinction.
Right, it's a perfect reflection of accumulated spiritual momentum. Think of it like modern physics.
Like an object in motion.
Exactly. Consider the deterministic trajectory of a ball rolling down a hill.
Right.
A physicist doesn't dictate where the ball is going to end up. They just calculate its trajectory based on mass, velocity, friction.
So they know when and where it'll arrive, but they aren't forcing it to arrive.
Exactly. The cosmic ledger is like an infallible spiritual physics equation.
Wow.
So it doesn't negate Lee's free will. It's actually the ultimate record of his free will, compounding over decades of solitary practice.
The conditions have been met, so the outcome is a mathematical certainty.
Right. The math just checks out.
Okay, I like that. But even if the ledger just calculates the inevitable result of his actions, it still sets up this really fascinating dynamic of interception.
Yes, the interception is key.
Because Laozi has perfect foreknowledge of Lai's arrival and his exact spiritual state. And armed with this data, Laozi doesn't just sit there waiting.
No, he orchestrates a deliberate intervention.
Right. He sends two immortal boys halfway down the mountain to wait for Lai.
Which changes everything.
It changes the whole nature of the encounter. It's not a seeker stumbling upon a master anymore. It's a master springing a psychological trap based on algorithmic certainty.
It is a trap. The interception is Lai's primary psychological trial.
So let's talk about Lai's approach, because the text gives us a crucial visual detail here.
Right, what he's wearing.
Yeah. As he climbs, he's wearing a Skiangwan Yufu.
Immortal headgear and feathered robes?
Immortal headgear and feathered robes, so he is loudly broadcasting his spiritual status through his clothes.
He really is. Those feathered robes are a highly specific signifier in Taoist asceticism.
What do they mean exactly?
They indicate a practitioner who has shed the heavy, earthly garments of the mundane world. They consider themselves aligned with the ethereal, soaring nature of the immortals.
So he's heavily invested in the aesthetics of his own spiritual identity.
He's projecting an image of advanced cultivation, absolutely.
Right, and then these two boys step onto the path, they block his way, and they ask, "Are you not Mr. Lei?"
Which must have been a shock.
And they tell him that Laozi explicitly sent them to welcome him.
And we get a window right into Lee's head in that moment.
We do. The text says he is secretly happy.
Secretly happy.
He takes this interception as definitive proof that he is Yu Dao Yuan.
Fated or possessing an affinity with the Tao.
Right. And that phrase, Yu Dao Yu Yuan, that's kind of the psychological linchpin of this whole sequence, isn't it?
It really is. Yuan is a complex concept. People usually translate it as fate, but it's more like dependent origination or karmic resonance.
Karmic resonance.
Okay. It implies that the conditions between two entities have perfectly aligned for a connection to occur.
So Lai's secret happiness reveals a profound vulnerability then.
Exactly. Despite his fancy feathered robes and all his years of isolated practice, his internal state still really craves external validation.
Which exposes the underlying ego trap of the spiritual seeker.
Big time.
And honestly, there's a deep, resonant human truth here. Like, think about it. If you spend decades in isolation, meticulously cultivating a specific identity.
Right, whether you're a spiritual ascetic or like an obscure academic or an unappreciated artist.
Exactly. The sudden, unprompted recognition by the highest possible authority in your field, that is going to be intoxicating.
Oh, for sure.
His secret happiness shows that his ego is fully intact. He is thrilled that the universe sees him.
It highlights the tension between his cultivated exterior and his unresolved internal desires.
Because the solitary journey is just inherently isolating.
It is. To have the supreme authority not just acknowledge you, but actually anticipate your arrival. That validates your entire life's work.
So the text is dissecting the profound psychological impact of being perceived by power.
Yeah, Lai believes he has arrived. He believes his feathered robes are totally justified.
But I have to question the utility of this validation.
In what way?
Well, is his secret happiness just a symptom of lingering spiritual materialism? Like, is he just using enlightenment as another hierarchy to climb and conquer?
That's a fair point.
Or is it actually a necessary, functional step in his journey? Because maybe the realization that the Tao is a reciprocal relationship, that the universe actually responds to human effort, maybe that's required to move forward.
Because if he didn't get that validation, he might have just given up.
Exactly. He might have abandoned the path entirely out of despair.
The duality of that moment is completely deliberate. The desire for recognition is still a fetter of the ego. It anchors him to the mundane world.
Right.
But at the same time, the realization of Yun, that the cosmos is actually responsive, that shifts his whole understanding.
It changes the Tao from a silent void to a relational matrix.
Yes. It bolsters his confidence, cures whatever imposter syndrome he might have had, and lets him confidently climb the final stretch of the mountain.
He confidently crosses the threshold into the Grand Hall.
He does.
But his confidence is immediately and violently dismantled the second he actually walks in and sees the physical forms of the two masters.
The visual shock is intense.
It is. The text abruptly shifts away from psychological subtlety into these aggressive, hyper-specific biological descriptions.
It really focuses on the physical.
Yeah. The visual impact of true mastery completely shatters his preconceived notions of what spiritual attainment looks like.
Because the aesthetic descriptions of Laozi and Wang Qi, they aren't just poetic flourishes.
No, they're not.
They're foundational alchemical claims about the nature of the human body when it's under the influence of perfected Qi.
So let's look at Laozi first. When Li looks at Laozi, he sees a figure surrounded by auspicious clouds and radiant light.
Glowing, basically.
Literally glowing. But the biological markers are what really demand our attention.
Yeah, they are very specific.
Laozi's skin is described as soft and delicate, like a maiden in her boudoir. Jifu tu yu rogi zongji chuzi.
Right?
And his internal spirit is brimming and full, like an infant in swaddling clothes. Jing shen sheng man yu kuang bao xinger.
Which is such a contrast to what we expect.
Exactly. These descriptions directly contradict our conventional visual archetypes of wisdom.
Yeah, we usually associate deep knowledge with the physical toll of a long life.
Right. Deep wrinkles, frailty, being weathered by decades of earthly experience. Like a wizard with a long gray beard.
Yes, the Gandalf archetype.
Exactly. Yet Laozi embodies the biological markers of early life and extreme youth. He has the skin of a young woman and the energetic signature of a baby.
Because Laozi's physical manifestation is the literal embodiment of Fanben Huiyuan.
Returning to the origin?
Exactly. In Taoist internal alchemy, normal human aging is seen as a continuous, unidirectional leakage of original vital energy.
Yuanqi.
Right. So the hardening of the body, losing flexibility, your senses dulling, these are all symptoms of energy expenditure.
You're just spending your battery.
Yes. And Laozi hasn't just stopped this leakage. He's reversed the biological clock.
The infant symbolizes unblemished potential.
Pure energy that hasn't been spent or corrupted by cognitive dissonance yet.
And the maiden symbolizes pure yin energy.
Softness, flexibility, perfect receptivity. Laozi has returned his physical vessel to an uncarved block.
He retains infinite cosmic wisdom, but resets his biological hardware.
It's a state of absolute physiological zero.
Right. But then the text immediately juxtaposes this with the other master, Wang Qi.
Who is totally different.
Completely. Wang Qi presents a totally different evolutionary endpoint. He has a youthful, vibrant face, but it's framed by crane white hair.
Crane white.
And he has striking blue or green eyes, bayan, and these exceptionally long eyebrows.
Which is a very specific look.
It is. The text notes his elegant bearing, suffused with true Qi, and then makes this incredibly explicit, startling claim.
That he looks like a true heavenly god.
Yes, and that his physical structure is Fei Renjian Fangu, not of mortal bone.
Right. While Laozi represents absolute regression to pure potential, Wang Qi represents the ultimate sublimation of experience.
How so?
Well, the crane is a huge symbol of extreme longevity in Chinese mythology.
Ah, okay.
So the stark white hair signifies immense age and profound temporal experience, but it sits on a face untouched by decay.
And the green or blue eyes.
Those often signify a piercing, transcendent vision, the ability to see beyond the mundane spectrum.
But the phrase, not of mortal bone, is really the critical alchemical assertion here.
It is. It's a huge claim.
That is the line that fundamentally challenges a modern rationalist reading of this text.
Oh, absolutely.
Because the text isn't speaking in metaphors about his state of mind. It is claiming that Wang Kui's internal spiritual practices have fundamentally transmuted his cellular structure.
His bones are literally made of something else.
Exactly. Different substance than a standard human. Which brings up a huge philosophical issue with Cartesian dualism.
Western separation of mind and body.
Right. Why does a text that is focused on the ultimate, formless Tao place such an obsessive emphasis on physical aesthetics?
It seems contradictory to us.
It does. Shouldn't enlightenment be an entirely internal, invisible cognitive state? Focusing on glowing skin and immortal bones risks reducing spiritual mastery to just, like, divine vanity.
I get why you'd say that, but that discomfort stems directly from our Cartesian framework. We separate the intellect from the flesh.
But classical Taoism doesn't do that.
Not at all. In Taoism, psychosomatic unity is absolute. The spirit, the energy, and the physical essence are just different densities of the exact same underlying substance.
Shen, Qi, and Jing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you literally cannot possess a perfected luminous spirit housed in a decaying, disorganized physical vessel.
The internal state forces the external form to match.
Yes. It inevitably and forcefully dictates the external form. If you've truly purified your internal energy, it's physiologically impossible to hide it.
So the reverse aging, the transmutation of bone, these are just the biological receipts of the spiritual work.
Exactly. It's not vanity. It's the physical law of their universe manifesting in real time.
Wow. Okay, so Li Tiaguai walks in and witnesses this undeniable, glowing physical proof of mastery, and the impact on him is devastating.
Completely falls apart.
The text details a profound and immediate psychological collapse. Li approaches the masters and bows deeply.
And then they offer him a seat as a basic courtesy.
Right. The two immortals return his greeting and offer him a chair. And Li's reaction is extraordinary. He passionately refuses the chair.
He won't even sit down.
He rejects the basic physical posture of an equal or even just a worthy guest. Instead, he verbally degrades himself.
He goes hard on himself.
He identifies himself as a Shanye Biren, a vulgar person of the mountains and forests.
He claims to be the absolute lowest grade of practitioner.
Right. He says that while he desires the great Tao, he hasn't grasped even the smallest fraction of its truth.
Complete self-deprecation.
And he declares that merely looking upon their faces is 3 lifetimes of good fortune. And he literally begs them to Zimiru Juto awaken him from his delusion.
The contrast between the guy hiking up the mountain and the guy kneeling in the hall is absolute.
It's night and day.
The practitioner who was just buoyed by his secret happiness, feeling good in his feathered robes, he's vanished.
Poof, gone.
Refusing the seat is a critical physical manifestation of cognitive emptying. By refusing to take up space in the room, he's trying to physically annihilate his prior identity.
See, I struggle with the extremity of this.
You think it's too much?
From a modern psychological perspective, this borders on unhealthy self-annihilation.
It does sound harsh.
Demanding that a student view themselves as a vulgar person, completely lost in delusion just to learn something new, that seems like a toxic pedagogical model.
If they're breaking him down just to build him up.
Right. It raises the question of whether this behavior is merely performative. Like, is it just a ritualistic display of subservience that he assumes they expect?
Or is it a genuine ego death?
Exactly. Does acquiring profound truth actually require the complete hatred of your prior self?
Well, interpreting his actions as self-hatred or performative subservience kind of misses the epistemological crisis he's actually in.
Okay, what do you mean?
It's an issue of scale. Lamai isn't performing. He is experiencing catastrophic cognitive dissonance.
Because he realized his mental model was wrong.
Right. He spent years in the mountains building a mental model of what spiritual cultivation meant, relying on his own isolated metrics of success.
He was grading his own homework.
Exactly. And upon encountering Laozi and Wang Kui, he instantly realizes the immense scale of his ignorance.
Oh, I see.
It's like a physicist who spent his whole life mastering Newtonian mechanics suddenly being confronted with the reality of quantum entanglement.
The old framework isn't just a little flawed, it's fundamentally inadequate to describe the new reality.
Yes. So calling himself vulgar and deluded is actually an expression of radical, uncompromising honesty.
He's recognizing that his foundation was built on profound misunderstandings of reality.
To get the ultimate truth, the old paradigm has to be entirely demolished. The vessel must be violently emptied before it can be filled.
Wow. It is the ultimate manifestation of the beginner's mind, born out of ontological shock.
Perfectly said.
He realizes those feathered robes were just an elaborate costume masking his ignorance.
Yeah, he was just playing dress up.
And it is precisely this complete surrender of his ego, this total voiding of his prior assumptions, that Laozi is waiting for.
Laozi sees that the vessel is empty.
Right. Recognizing that Lai is ready, Laozi finally delivers the core teaching of the text, the paradoxical, dense formula for longevity in alignment with the Tao.
And this sermon requires meticulous parsing. Every single clause is a masterclass in internal alchemy.
Let's read it. Laozi states, "The essence of the ultimate Tao is deep and profound, or dark. The extreme of the ultimate Tao is dim and silent. See nothing, hear nothing, embrace the spirit with stillness, and the form will correct itself. You must be still, must be pure. Do not labor your form. Do not shake your essence. Do not indulge your thoughts or worries. Then you can live long."
It's so dense.
It really is. Let's analyze the opening framework first. The essence of the ultimate Tao is deep and profound. The extreme is dim and silent.
The terminology here is Yaoming, which means dark or profound, and Hunmo, which means dim and silent.
Which establishes this stark dichotomy between the fundamental nature of reality and the human experience of it.
Right.
Because our daily existence is defined by intense sensory friction. It is loud, it's blindingly bright, and it's characterized by constant kinetic agitation.
It's exhausting.
Exactly. And Laozi is asserting that the kinetic, sensory-rich world is fundamentally a superficial layer. It's an aberration from the true architecture of existence.
Which is absolute, unfathomable stillness.
Right. So by establishing that baseline, the practical instructions that follow become logical imperatives, not just ascetic suggestions.
Like a command to see nothing, hear nothing.
Yeah. This is an instruction for severe sensory deprivation, or shutting the sensory gates.
Because in Taoist physiology, the sensory organs, especially the eyes and ears, aren't just passive receptors of data.
Right. They aren't just microphones and cameras.
Exactly. They are active apertures. They are holes through which internal vital energy continuously leaks out into the world.
So every instance of visual fixation, every moment you strain to listen, represents a micro-expenditure of your lifespan.
Your bleeding cord every time you pay attention to something mundane.
I have to challenge the literal application of this, though.
Go for it.
If the mandate for longevity is literally see nothing, hear nothing, it sounds indistinguishable from advocating for a permanent sensory deprivation tank.
It does sound pretty extreme.
If a person completely ceases all interaction with the external world, like blindfolded, ears plugged, refusing to engage with reality, they are functionally dead to the world.
Right.
So how does a philosophy justify preserving a life by demanding the cessation of all living activities? It feels fundamentally anti-life.
That skepticism is totally valid, and it highlights a crucial distinction here between biological cessation and energy conservation.
Okay, explain that.
The text isn't advocating for clinical brain death or putting yourself in a permanent coma. We have to analyze this through the lens of cognitive load.
Like allostatic overload in modern psychology.
Exactly. The human nervous system was not designed to process the sheer volume of sensory data, hypothetical threats, and abstract information that makes up modern society. Or even complex ancient society, honestly.
So it's about managing the input.
Yes. Laozi's instruction is about sensory budgeting. Seeing nothing and hearing nothing is a directive to sever the unnecessary attachments to external stimuli.
The stuff that doesn't serve the preservation of the core self.
Exactly. By closing the gates to superficial noise, the internal energy is forced to turn back upon itself.
Ah, and this mechanism of turning the energy inward is explicitly stated in the next line.
What's the line?
Embrace the spirit with stillness, and the form will correct itself. Bao Shen Yi Jing, Xing Jing Jing.
It's a beautiful line.
It suggests that the physical body possesses an innate, flawless blueprint for perfect health and regeneration.
An autonomous healing system.
Exactly. But this healing system is constantly suppressed or interrupted because the cognitive architecture is entirely preoccupied with processing that relentless influx of external data.
The system is just too overwhelmed with external processing to execute its internal maintenance protocols.
It's like putting a smartphone on extreme battery saver mode. You shut down all the background apps, turn down the screen brightness, stop the notifications so the core system can actually repair itself.
That is the perfect analogy. And the subsequent commands clarify the methodology of this preservation even further.
Right. Do not labor your form, Wu Lao or Xing.
And do not shake your essence, Wu Yao or Zheng.
So it's an injunction against physical overexertion driven by ambition,
And against violent emotional oscillations.
like extreme rage, profound grief, consuming lust.
Right, things that destabilize the neurochemical and bioenergetic foundation of the body.
But the most piercing directive, I think, is the command regarding cognition.
Do not indulge your thoughts or worries.
Yes. Wukui arsilu. The specific verb used there, quia, implies a dangerous familiarity, an indulgence, like playing with your thoughts.
He doesn't demand the impossible cessation of all spontaneous thought. He's diagnosing the lethal nature of rumination.
Right. The act of simulating arguments in your head, agonizing over past regrets, endlessly forecasting future anxieties, it is not a neutral mental exercise.
It's a physical act that drains the biological battery.
Chronic anxiety is portrayed here not merely as a psychological burden, but as an active mechanism of cellular destruction.
It shakes the essence.
It shakes the essence. It's a breathtaking synthesis of mind and body.
It really is. The paradox at the heart of this cheat code is that the ultimate state of vitality, biological resilience, and cognitive clarity is achieved entirely through subtraction.
Subtraction, not addition.
Right. You don't add new supplements. You don't learn complex new maneuvers. You don't accumulate more data.
You systematically cease the actions that cause friction and leakage.
You starve the anxieties by refusing to indulge them. And in that profound stillness, the form naturally aligns with the longevity of the Tao.
Wow. And the transmission of this intensely paradoxical formula triggers an immediate and spectacular response in Li Tieguai.
Both physiologically and psychologically.
Yes. The text describes a moment of sudden enlightenment. Upon hearing the sermon, Li's mind flower suddenly opens. Shinho Dunkai.
And simultaneously, his worldly desires melt away like ice. Chen Qingbin Shi.
The imagery there, the mind flower blooming, the ice melting, it signifies an instantaneous phase transition in his consciousness.
It's sudden. It's not depicted as a gradual assimilation of knowledge.
Like he's not taking notes and planning to implement a new meditation routine over the coming months.
No, the biological and spiritual lock just clicks open immediately.
See, the suddenness of this transformation really challenges our understanding of human behavioral change.
Because it's usually so hard to change.
Exactly. We know how deeply ingrained neurobiological habits are. Lifelong anxieties and entrenched worldly desires do not typically vanish in a single moment of clarity.
They usually take years of therapy.
Right. So is the text implying narrative exaggeration here just to emphasize how profound the sermon is? Or does it genuinely posit that decades of cognitive conditioning can be obliterated instantly?
Well, the phase transition is instantaneous, but we can't ignore the thermodynamic pressure that preceded it.
The boiling water analogy.
Right, the melting of the ice was sudden, but the ambient temperature had been rising for decades.
Lai had already dedicated his life to ascetic practice.
Exactly. He had physically endured the climb up Mount Hua. And most importantly, he had just undergone that violent, agonizing process of ego death.
Completely emptying his vessel by acknowledging his total ignorance.
Right. So the mind flower didn't bloom in barren soil. It bloomed in soil that had been meticulously cultivated and was finally catalyzed by the exact frequency of Laozi's instruction.
The suddenness of the realization is just the final threshold being crossed.
The moment he realizes that the heavy ice of his desires was a burden he was actively choosing to carry.
Wow.
Once Laozi provided the formula for stillness, the mechanism maintaining the ice simply ceased to exist.
Because he stopped applying the energetic effort required to keep his anxieties frozen in place.
He just let go.
The realization allows him to finally drop the weight.
It does.
And this brings us to the closing moments of the encounter, which features a profoundly radical piece of advice from the second master, Wang Qi.
Yes, Wang Qi finally speaks up.
Li sits there, fundamentally rewired. His worldly attachments are dissolved. Wang Qi addresses him, acknowledges that Li's name is indeed in the immortal register, and instructs him to strictly hold to this practice.
Assuring him that he will arrive at ultimate mastery soon.
Right. And then Wang Qi delivers a devastatingly simple final command, Hibi Duokyu.
There is no need to seek more.
There is no need to seek more. In the context of a text devoted to spiritual seeking, instructing the seeker to stop seeking is just a magnificent subversion.
It highlights the ultimate trap of the intellectual pursuit of enlightenment.
And it is a trap that is incredibly prevalent today.
Oh, absolutely.
We are so obsessed with optimization. We constantly hunt for the next podcast, the next philosophy, the next system that will finally unlock our potential.
We accumulate mountains of data about how to live well.
Exactly. And Wang Kui is identifying that this endless pursuit of knowledge eventually metastasizes into just another form of worldly attachment.
It becomes a sophisticated way of laboring your form and indulging your thoughts.
Under the guise of spiritual progress.
It's such a trap.
Wang Kui is demanding that Lissy stop accumulating data. The formula has been provided. The theoretical portion of the exam is over. Now he must execute the code.
The sheer discipline required to stop looking for a better answer and simply inhabit the stillness is immense.
It really marks the transition from the accumulation of knowledge to the actual embodiment of wisdom.
With that final injunction to cease seeking, the encounter concludes cleanly. Wang Kui orders the two boys to escort Li out. Li bows, departs the hall, and descends the mountain.
His internal architecture permanently transformed.
Permanently.
It is such a remarkable narrative arc.
It really is.